The Green Bay Packers have had a season of highs and lows this year. With Aaron Rodgers under center, the perennial playoff team started off at a promising 4-1, and it looked as though they were well on their way to another playoff season. Unfortunately for them, in a Week 6 loss to the Vikings, everything changed. On a 2nd and 9 from their own 40-yard line, Rodgers set up with an empty backfield and dropped back. As Rodgers rolled out to his right, Vikings linebacker Anthony Barr slammed into Rodgers, causing him to hit the ground hard. The aftermath of his injury was a broken collarbone and a trip to the IR. 30-year man Brett Hundley proceeded to step up at quarterback, and you could say that his first few games were, less than successful, as Hundley started off just 1-3 in his first 4 starts with the team. Going into Week 12, the Packers were sitting at 5-5, coming off of a shutout against the Ravens and facing one of the league's best teams in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Though they ended up losing the game due to a last-second field goal, Hundley played great as he threw for 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. Hundley continued to play well in his next 2 games as he led the Packers to 2 consecutive victories. With the Packers now at 7-6 and still very much alive in the playoff hunt, Rodgers is now eligible to come off of injured reserve and return to the team. In today's video, I'm going to analyze whether the Packers can go on a late season run to make the playoffs for the 9th consecutive year. Late last night, Aaron himself confirmed that he had won his battle with the team doctors and was cleared to play. Personally, if I were the Packers, I would play Rodgers, but if they were eliminated from the playoffs at any time, I would pull him. Now, this could have a chance to backfire on you, as I'm sure that Rodgers would be very unhappy about not playing when he would be able to, but as long as you handle it well, there wouldn't be any problems. I highly doubt that they would do that, but it's just a thought. So in the Packers' first game with Rodgers back, the Packers take on the Panthers in Carolina. The Panthers' defense this year has been up and down, though they have been struggling a bit lately. This most certainly isn't the easiest game for Rodgers to come back on, but I think that Rodgers can throw on a relatively weak Carolina secondary, even though their front 7 has been playing very well lately. However, what I would be most concerned about if I were the Pack would be Carolina's offense. Cam Newton has that offense looking more and more like its 2015 self every week, as they've put on an absolute tear lately, putting up 45, 35, and a pair of 31-point performances in their last 4 games. Even last week against Cleveland, the Packers look very vulnerable and suspect on the defensive end. They let DeShone Kizer go 20 of 28 against them, and they also let Isaiah Crowell run for 121 yards on just 19 carries. That's 6.5 yards per carry, which is alarmingly bad, especially with a Cleveland offensive line that has been downright awful since it lost Joe Thomas. So basically, Carolina is just going to be tough. There's going to be really no easy way to win that game. After that game, they play the Vikings at home. Obviously, as I stated before, the Vikings were the team that injured Rodgers in the first place, so I could possibly see some animosity and tension between those 2 teams because of that. I also believe that the Packers could come out fired up for that crowd in Lambeau, not to mention on a primetime Sunday night game. With all that being said, I think it's actually a very winnable game for Green Bay, but don't get me wrong, it's far from a pushover. Despite the loss last week, fringe MVP candidate Case Keenum is still playing awesome, and that Vikings defense is still ferocious and out for blood. If I were to compare the 2 games that I've covered thus far, I would say that this game is slightly more winnable than the game at Carolina due to the fact that it's in Green Bay on Sunday night, the crowd will be roaring and excited, and just all of those factors will create the perfect storm that I could definitely see the Packers coming out on top in that game. Discussing the final game between the Packers and Lions is a bit more difficult for me, as both teams could be out of the playoff hunt by the time Week 17 rolls around. However, I think that if one of the teams that's out of the playoffs and another is vying for a spot, that we could see a good spoiler type of game. And obviously, if both teams are still alive, I think we'll see a good game. Please excuse the voice crack, it happens sometimes. Last month, the Lions handled the Pack rather easily, winning 30-17 with Matthew Stafford lighting Green Bay up for 361 yards. This time around, though, I could see Rodgers being an equalizer because I think that he can more than hang with the firepower that Stafford can put up. So there you have it with the 3 games. Let me put it this way. Even with Aaron Rodgers, it's still going to be very tough and hard for the Packers to get in. Something that I failed to point out that I would like to would be that Green Bay isn't guaranteed in, even if they do run the table. They would need Seattle to lose at least one more game. They would need Atlanta to lose 2 more times because they hold a tiebreaker with Green Bay because they beat them. And if they beat Carolina, they would also have to lose one of their remaining 2 games following. But I'm never going to count out the bad man that is Aaron Rodgers. So maybe with a bit of luck on their side, he'll pull some crazy magic and get the Packers into the playoffs. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if Rodgers pulled off 3 straight Hail Marys to win each game. I think that the common denominator here is if they were in the playoffs, I would not want to be facing them if I were another NFC playoff team. So that's about all I got for today's video on the Packers. I know for one that I do not want the Packers in the playoffs because on the off chance they would meet my team in the Super Bowl, I would not be too optimistic considering I already saw them lose to Rodgers a few years back. For those of you that have big minds and can think fast, congratulations, because you now know who my favorite NFL team is. If you can't figure it out, then, well, I don't really blame you. My explanation there was very vague and confusing. One last thing that I do want to say is that I apologize for releasing this video so late, as this video really would have probably been better had it been released on Monday, because let's be honest, I think this topic would have been more fresh in people's minds the day after football was just played. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. If you would like to be notified of when I upload a video, then please click the bell in the bottom right hand corner to receive those. Also, feel free to share your thoughts of the video down in the comments section, and you all have a great day.